horror audiences stopped being scared by found footage years ago, which is insane to say. And it's not because they got braver. It's because we all learned the rules. The shaky camera, someone dies, and then the tape ends. So when analog horror showed up, there was no rules to learn. There was no protagonist to follow or cheer for. No ending to wait for. Which meant that everything that we had learned and built over 20 years meant absolutely nothing.
Broke off there, you seen that?
What is it?
So what does it mean when a format that's been designed to scare you stops working and something else quietly takes its place? Regular horror has a frame, a beginning, a middle, end, and credits. You know you're watching a movie. Found footage tried to erase that frame. Analog horror removes the concept of watching entirely. So which one actually works? Well, that depends on what working means in horror. So to answer that, we need to understand what each format is actually doing to your brain. Found footage didn't tell you a horror story. It told you this is real footage, someone filmed it, and you're not signing up to be entertained. You're signing up to be a witness.
Oh my God.
This is the CDC.
We're in the middle of some kind of viral outbreak. It's eating their organs, intestines, liver, it goes for kidneys.
The technical limitations were the whole point of found footage. You had a shaky camera, audio dropout, and a low resolution. In traditional films, those are errors, but in found footage, they're evidence. Proof the camera operator was scared, running for their life, and most important, was human. Grave Encounters understood that instinctively. A crew walks into an abandoned psychiatric hospital. The chaos escalates on its own. The moment the characters realize the cameras can't help them anymore, that's the contract breaking in real time. Gonjiam modernized it. They had better gear, more cameras, but the core principle stayed. The camera gives you access that you shouldn't have. That proximity is what found footage weaponizes. Ironically, the genre had a problem it never solved. Found footage logic requires characters who keep filming when no rational person ever would. Willow Creek found a different answer. It stopped explaining and it stopped cutting away. It locked the camera on a tent in the dark and let the audience sit in that discomfort until their brain generates the threat on its own.
I'm probably fucking with us. Just go back to bed. Did you hear that?
Hear what? That sounds like someone's crying.
The scariest thing wasn't what you saw. It was the weight of what you couldn't see. Working in the haunted attraction industry has taught me that the most reliable tool I have in my toolbox isn't a jump scare or a big monster reveal. It's the anticipation without resolution. Holding the beat 3 seconds longer than comfortable, and people's minds do all the construction work. However, by the early 2010s, found footage had a formula and audiences knew it. The shaky camera and the night vision, someone dies, roll the credits. When the format becomes predictable, the psychological contract breaks because you stop being a witness and you become a movie viewer, and the viewer is safe. The Taking of Deborah Logan tried to solve it. Clinical documentation instead of raw panic. But it still needs characters, and characters give you someone to follow, which means you're truly never alone with what you're watching. And then Savageland came in and asked a question the entire genre had been avoiding. What if there was no video at all?
Usually when somebody is playing with film, you can tell. You look at these pictures, there's none of that. You own a gun? I do. And Ever since I've seen these photographs, I've been sleeping with it under my pillow.
At least they can't get me in here.
Crime scene stills, evidence documentation, no motion, just images. And somehow that feels more real than anything moving, because static images don't feel like film. It feels like evidence, like something you're not supposed to have. That shift changed what the genre was even asking. It stopped asking, did this happen? And then started asking something more unsettling. What am I looking at? Analog horror doesn't enter quietly. Local 58 is an emergency broadcast with no narrator and no framing. It's just a channel transmitting instructions to stay inside, don't look at the moon, remain calm. There's no explanation. There's no story being told to you because the broadcast assumes you already know what happened. It's just giving you instructions for an event it will not describe. Found footage says you are watching the record of something terrible, while analog horror says the event's already happened. Here's the relevant safety information. Gemini Home Entertainment operates basically the same way, just educational aesthetics, training tape presentations, content that serves a mundane purpose, except something has infiltrated it. The wrongness isn't announced, it's just accumulating. Here's what separates analog horror from everything else that's come before it. Found footage gave you a protagonist. Even when they die, their death has the ending. The story has a shape. However, analog horror removes all of that. With no protagonist, there's no guide, there's no shape. You're watching institutional content, broadcasts, government transmissions, training materials, and that content has already been corrupted by something it refuses to acknowledge.
Ghost stories in Mason stretch back 100 years or more, as early as its founding by missionaries. An urban legend unique to the county. The Woman in Profile. A local newspaper printed the first instance of the story in 1961.
The specific dread of receiving official information that doesn't add up does not panic. The slow realization that the systems designed to protect you have already failed. Local 58 manufactures that feeling from a television set. You're not watching it, you found it already. And finding it doesn't make you any much safer. In found footage, the monster is on the camera because the character ran into it at some point inside the story in real time. In analog horror, the threat has already been documented and it's been studied. The people who had the complete picture either went silent or they started issuing warnings they wouldn't explain. Found footage puts you inside the experience. Analog horror puts you outside of it, holding evidence of something that's already concluded, trying to reconstruct what went wrong. Analog horror doesn't show you the monster clearly. And that's not due to a budget constraint. It's exploiting a documented feature of human cognition. Given incomplete information and a threat signal, and your brain starts generating the most worst possible version of what it could possibly be. Not the most likely, okay? I said the worst. And that's not a flaw. That's how threat detection systems are built. It's optimized for survival, not accuracy. Analog horror doesn't need to show you the monster. It just needs to give you the signal and let your brain do the rest. And it's considerably more pessimistic than any effects budget. That's a deliberate psychological exploit. If you like horror topics just like this one, then do me a favor, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of my topics that I do because I put them out every week. But let's get back into it. Found footage has convinced you that something has happened. Analog horror convinces you something is wrong. And those aren't the same type of fear. Found footage is event-based. Something terrible has occurred. The terror lives in the past. Even if the character dies, there's a resolution, even if it's a bad one. Analog horror has no past tense because the broadcast is still transmitting. The warning is still active. Nothing resolved because nothing has ever been framed as needing a resolution. One puts you inside the moment, the other follows you after it's over.
We're looking at here, our ground team is attempting to get closer to what you're seeing on the screen. We'll have more updates for you as they come in over the next hour. Again, in case you're just joining us.
Here's which format actually works better. It's the one that least resembles a format. The moment the audience identifies what they're watching, they've already built distance from it. Genre recognition is the defense mechanism. Analog horror strategy is to deny you that, because the moment you can explain it, you've already destroyed it. So the age-old question is, which one actually works better? It's the one that doesn't need you to believe it, because by the time you realize you're not sure, it's already working. So what scares you more? Something that has happened or something that feels like it's never stopped? If you want more horror content, reviews, recommendations, and of course topics just like this one, hit that sub button so you don't miss any of my content that I got coming out, because I got a lot of really good ones coming. So until next time, go check out my other videos. Hit that like, follow, subscribe, comment, do all that fun stuff. But more importantly, don't get too scared. Take care, guys.